Work it, make it, do it, makes us harder, better, faster, stronger.
That don't kill me, can only make us stronger. I need you to hurry up, man.
Had broken into our house, stolen my Jordans, stolen our water pump. So we were on day number 10 without water. I hadn't showered in 6 days. There were plates stacked up to the ceiling. There were maggots everywhere. There was a rat in our house that we couldn't catch. And every single morning, he would leave poop on my desk. And I remember just sitting there one morning. It's like 4:30 in the morning. I'm hearing the dog bark outside the window. The mosquitoes, I got 13 mosquito bites on my left leg, 7 mosquito bites on my right leg. And I'm sitting there in like 6 days of sweat. And I'm thinking, all because of the boy Joseph Smith saw God in 1820. Here I am in the Dominican Republic, absolutely struggling. Then, off in the distance, I heard something. Was it a bird? No. Was it a plane? No. Was it the Haitian woman that sold avocados on the corner? No. It was this beautiful sound. Whoops.
Te amé, te adoré, no te quiero ver.
And at that moment, as I was hearing this song, all the feelings that I had, all the hardships that I've gone through in the last 10 days, kind of just went away. The world had just stopped for like 15 seconds. And that was my first. So my intentions today are not to get you to listen to Prince Royce, even though this is a banger. My intentions are for you to change your perspective on how music can impact and shape your lives. Now, despite popular opinion, music was not invented by Kanye West, but it goes way back. Listen to the Sumerians, the Egyptians, the Greeks, the Romans. Since the beginning of time, music has been a very important part of society. Just think about it. All the great musicians that we've been able to witness. Mozart, Elvis Presley, the Beatles, Michael freaking Jackson, the GOAT, Queen, and of course the greatest musician of all time, myself. So today I want to teach you a little acronym that's going to help you remember the impact that music can have on your lives. EMU. On 3, we're all going to say this together. 1, 2, 3.
EMU.
1, 2, 3.
EMU.
Louder. 1, 2, 3.
EMU.
Exactly. We're going to talk about how music will help you emotionally, will help you with your memory, and will unify us as a people. So by raise of hands, how many of you have ever been sad? How many of you have ever been happy? How many of you have ever been mad? How many of you have ever been jealous? How many of you have ever wanted to rob a gas station? Well, there's only one thing in this entire planet that can make you feel all of these different things. And it's not your ex, it's actually music. Music is one of the few things that can turn a good day to a bad day, or a bad day to a good day. Music helps us feel deep emotions. Music also helps us with our memory. How many of you, when you have to organize something in alphabetical order, you have to sing the ABCs? Okay, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Ah, yeah, that's the next letter. Or how many of you know this jingle? Ba-da-ba-ba. There's something kind of weird, right? It's like, I can't remember what I learned in math class this morning, but for some reason, I can remember this niche Minecraft parody song from 2013 that I haven't heard in 10 years. There's something psychological that goes on in the brain when it comes to music and memory. It works the part of the brain that deals with positive reinforcement. For example, when you have a dog, right? Every time you feed the dog, you ring a bell. Over time, the dog is going to associate the sound of the bell with food time. So the same thing happens with music. So for example, my boy Jack, every time he hears the song Hotline Bling, he starts to think about his ex-girlfriend from 7th grade and his first kiss, right? So every time we have a core memory like that, our brain associates this memory with music and the feelings that we felt. For example, If I were to ask you to maybe state the quadratic formula or talk about something you learned last week, you might struggle. But if I asked you the lyrics to these next couple songs, I think it would come pretty easily.
Shake that.
Every day I'm shuffling.
How about this one? Or how about this one?
Realize that I should have bought you flowers. Should have given you all my hours. That I had a chance.
So not only can music change the way we think and change the way we feel, arguably the most important thing that music can do for us is it can create unity. Now, I want you to think about the last time the world was truly on the same page, the last time we felt unified as a people. And I want you to close your eyes. This was it.
Style.
Think about how unified we were over a song when the only words in English were "Hey, sexy ladies," right? This type of unity is only achievable by music. Now, to get a little bit more serious, arguably, maybe more unifiable than Gangnam Style, there was something very, very special that happened in the winter of 1914. To kind of set the stage, we're dealing with the Great War. They called it the War to End All Worlds. World War I. Honestly, one of arguably the most terrible atrocities in human nature, right? Think about each other every single day. And so on Christmas Eve of 1914, we have the French versus the Germans. And on Christmas Eve, what happened was the ceasefire of 1914, where both parties put their weapons aside and they gathered together to share Christmas, and they sang the Silent Night. So music was something that was able to unify groups of people that were trying to kill each other every single day in the most inhumane ways possible. So I want you guys to remember that the Lord's soul delighteth in music. So next time you listen to Kanye West or K-pop or whatever you listen to, keep in mind the impact that music can have on you and your life. And ask yourselves, not what can music do for me, but what I can do with music. Thank you.
Our next speaker is a member of the Communications College here on campus. He serves as a temple worker and as a journalist for BYUI Radio and is the main host for The Perfect Score. He aims to be a family man and a truth seeker, bringer and testator. Make some noise for the one, the only, Cody Allen Miller.
Welcome everybody to my presentation today, which I will talk about the parasite on America's soul. How about the news and how you could be immune to their manipulations and that you can better your everyday life. Now, I have a really interesting question for you. What is the parasite that infects America today? It has always been there to take away our freedoms. And now people will tell you, oh, it's Donald Trump, oh, it's Kamala Harris, oh, it's Chuck Schumer, or it's Nikki Haley, or whatever, all these people. And you just want to stay and say, shut up. This is how I used to feel about the news years ago. and I am feeling very tired of it. But then I realized the news shouldn't dictate what the parasite is today. Maybe it's hidden within the news itself. The news has been around here in America ever since before day one, actually. And and unfortunately, it's developed a massive problem. Here, let me give you some context. The very first kinds of news that we are publishing is simple written journal entries. Soon, those journals would become the almanac. Thank you. Basically, the almanac contained weather information, any kind of information that was dealing with the present dates. Basically, you can still read them today, but there are specific entries like farmers' almanacs and other kinds of almanacs. Even the church had its own for generations. The most famous one is known as the Poor Richard's Almanac, published between 1732 to 1758, written by none other than our good old Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin embraced the freedom of speech and the freedom of the press. In words or a letter called the Silent Stupid Letters, which he wrote to his brother's newspaper, he said this: "In those wretched countries where a man cannot call his tongue his own, he can scarcely call anything his own. Whoever would overthrow the liberty of a nation must begin by subduing the freeness of speech. Without freedom of thought, there can be no such thing as wisdom, and no such thing as public liberty without freedom of speech, which is the rights of every man." Well, that begs the question, so where did this all start? It started in the 1600s when a young man by the name of John Peter Zenger was attending a trial. He was arrested because he wrote some not so kind things about the British governor here in America. But thanks to his attorney, Andrew Hamilton, he basically said, it cannot be libel if it is true. And because he won the case, simply put, we can criticize the government and keep them accountable. And by doing so, the freedom of speech and freedom of the press becomes intertwined. Then came Pulitzer and Hearst. William Randolph Hearst and Joseph Pulitzer dominated the news world with their two newspapers. Pulitzer with the New York World and Hearst with the New York Journal. Together, they did a circulation war about who would read as much of them as possible through their newspapers. And so they began a thing called yellow journalism, where basically big titles, overinflated stories full of sex, violence, sensationalism, the things that would drive people mad. And it got people reading. For example, like, oh no, there's a ship that exploded in Cuba's main harbor in Havana. We should go to war against Spain. Oh wait, that actually happened in 1898. While they never started the war, they were major factors behind it. Then came the Vietnam War, America's biggest mistake. President LBJ and Nixon, both of them were considered powerful, corrupt men as presidents. And so the journalists had to be as powerful as them. And so there came one journalist above the rest. He would become famous for his phrase, and that's the way it is. He would always publish the truth. And whenever he would say his opinion in the news, he would tell you his opinion in the news. And he would always check his sources. People trusted him as the most trusted man in American history. Then came Tom Wolfe and subjective journalism. Basically, people were putting their opinions into the news and justifying it as the news. So where does that leave us today? Terrible. Very, very terrible, unfortunately. Because we can't discern opinion from fact. And because of that, nobody trusts the news anymore. And so, here's some of the tactics that they use to keep you reading, to get you angry, and to get the responses they want. There are many tactics like cherry picking, just picking up the best bits of information, putting it in the news source, and no one will know about it. False comparison, basically apples to oranges. They're fundamentally different. Like saying Trump is the same, if not worse, than Adolf Hitler. That's a problem. That's a very big problem. Appeals to ignorance. Hey, just trust me. I don't need to give you a source. Just the lack of a source means I am the source, and I'm an authority in the field, so you can trust me. Take their claims with a pound of salt. Guilt by association. Basically, anyone associated with Trump must be as evil as Trump. Not always the case, and that the popular fallacy, if everyone believes it, then it must be true. No, it isn't. Tell a lie long enough and everybody will believe it as the truth. Then there's mis and disinformation. Misinformation, basically information that is mischaracterized and given out of context. And this is given through half-truths and incomplete reporting. Disinformation is deliberately false information used to rile up the people and to get people to where they needed to be. And then even propaganda techniques. The news uses these things all the time. They demonize the enemy, saying that our church is a powerful organization full of money that we can do whatever we want. And that it's okay, practically, to justify attacking us. It's not. They conveniently leave half-truths everywhere saying, oh, they believe in this weird custom, and they're like, you left the context out of it. Loaded language such as reform and power and more to get people what they want to believe. Exaggeration, overbloated news. Basically, they're making a mountain out of a molehill. And then an argument from authority. Trust me because I'm the leader in the field. Trust me because I have my name in the logo for NBC Nightly News or CBS Evening News. Don't try that. So what can you do to make sure that you don't get deceived by the news and thus your freedoms are being taken away? First of all, read the same stories from different sources. You have the time. If you read it from the New York Times, read it from the Wall Street Journal. If you see it on Fox, see it on ABC, please get another news source so that way you can get the whole story. You have the time. People spend about 4 to 5 hours on their phones every single day. You have the time. 2, investigate the news source and the errors they have made. Remember, every news source is biased. You gotta find out which one leans which side. 3, detect clickbait and rage bait. Don't let it fool you. If it says some overbloated title, like for example, the cure to cancer is here, or do this, and then you'll be rich in no time. Take that with a ton of salt, because chances are it's not true. Because when you do these things, you will become, as David A. Bednar said in his Worldwide Youth Devotional a couple of weeks ago, that we are to become agents to act on and not objects to be acted upon. If all of us do these things, then we can dissect the news better, and then we can be more aware of the world around us. Please, I am begging you, do this, and it'll make your life easier. A little bit of work goes a long way. News organizations, I'm calling out to you. Do better. America is tired of this. Get rid of the subjective journalism. Go back to the day and age of objective journalism. Just like Walter Cronkite. While things concerning the news are tough right now, there is hope. There always has been hope. And there will still be hope. But what do I know? I'm just a guy who cares about you and who cares about the world. And that's the way it is on this day, November 19th, 2024, day 999. When Russia invaded Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you, Cody. Emme Hilbig is a junior bachelor majoring in communications with an emphasis in strategic organization. Originally from Boise, Idaho, she brings a positive, proactive approach to her studies and her life. Emme is driven by her passion for engaging in activities that bring joy and fulfillment and make her smile. She's always looking for ways to add fun and happiness to everything she does. Please welcome Emme Hilbig.
Hi, I just want to start by thanking all of you that were able to make it here in person, and for those of you that are watching at home. Hi, Mom and Dad. What if I told you that happiness isn't something that you chase, but rather it is something that we can create? What if I told you that there's 5 simple steps that we can do each day? Really quickly, can I have each of you stand up? Awesome, we're going to do a little exercise together. Can I have each of you please smile 3 times, and you can follow along with me. Ready? We're going to smile once, smile 2 times, now smile 3 times. Awesome, thank you so much. You can sit back down. And also, you all have really pretty smiles. I don't know about you guys, but it helps get my nerves away, it helps me feel comfortable, and it changes the energy of the room by just simply smiling. So let's go back in time a little bit to when I started my mission. I would give TED Talks. So here's a little example here of me talking to my companions and the sisters that I lived with. I would talk to them about things that I was passionate about. And I had this question come into my mind a lot. Why is it that I'm living the gospel of Jesus Christ, I'm trying my best to be obedient, but I still have hard experiences? Why do I still have hard times, and why do I feel down? And I see that as well now when I'm home, where I try my best to live the best life that I can, but I still have really hard experiences. So through this time, I've come up with 5 different ways that we can have joy and happiness within our lives. So, just like how I had you smile at the beginning, we're going to continue to participate together with 5 simple steps. So remember, number 1, you are most important. Number 2, we need to have peace in our lives. Number 3, life's a party. Number 4, we're going to list what we're grateful for. And number 5, extend a hand of help. Let's get right into it. Remember, you are most important. So can I have everyone put their fingers up? And now we're going to point to ourselves. I want you to never forget that you are most important in life. And there's lots of different ways that we can put ourselves first. Number 1, have self-care. Put time in the day for yourself. For me personally, I love getting ready in the mornings because that is time that is dedicated to just me. I love putting my face on, getting my hair done, doing lots of different things that make me feel good. And you know yourself best. You know what makes you feel good. So give yourself time each day to do that. Another thing that we can do is to set personal goals. Write it down. Make achievements in your life, because there's no greater feeling than accomplishing something that you've worked really hard for. Another thing that we can do to prioritize ourselves is to set boundaries. Learn how to say no. It is okay to let people know if you simply just don't have enough time to do something in the day, or if they want you to go do an activity that maybe you're not comfortable with. Like for me, I don't really like rock climbing, so I say no to those that invite me to go do it. And that is totally okay. It is okay to create that safe space for you and that happiness. But again, don't hold yourself back. Go out, try new things. But remember to always put yourself first. Now we're gonna go on to our second one, to have peace. Let's say everyone's peace signs. Nice. Awesome. So there's lots of different ways that we can cultivate peace into our everyday lives. We can do this by simply having moments of silence. By Valiant Healthcare, they did a study of people that had just 10 minutes of silence each day and what the benefits were because of that. For their mental health, people had better clarity, had time to process things, and which led to making better decisions. It also affected them physically as well, where people were able to relax better, which led to better and longer sleep. And I don't know about you guys, but being a college student, sleep is a huge priority that sometimes just doesn't happen. But if you have these moments of silence, it can create a better sleep for you later. Another thing that you can do is have spiritual reconnection. We're so blessed to live in Rexburg and have a temple just a block down the road. Create time to go there and to have that spirituality and reconnection. read your scriptures, pray. You can also meditate, which can also lead back to having moments of silence. And another way to have peace is to take a walk. Go outside, have a fresh breath of air. And I'll talk later about the benefits of nature as well. But I want you to prioritize, again, yourself and your peace. Make it something that is a part of your everyday lives to create that happiness and that consistency to help you keep going. Now we're going to go on to number 3. Remember, life's a party and so is 3. So let's do a little dance with our hands. Dance with our hands. Oh, love it. Okay, dance moves. Awesome. So there's lots of different ways that we can have parties, so to speak, in our lives. And what's a party without people? Here's just a few examples of the people that are a support and trust group in my life. See my ultimate frisbee team, my friends from high school, some of my roommates. I love doing volleyball, lots of my different friends. I also have a family as well that I love to have and put my trust in. A study done by Harvard Business Review said 74% of people have less stress and more energy and 50% higher productivity when they have a support group, when they have people that they can relate to and to let go of the stress of everyday things. Now, another way to have a party is to go outside, reconnect with nature. Washington Post has a quote that says, people who spend 2 to 3 hours outside have 20% more satisfaction with their lives and their health goes up 60%. Now again, we may not have 2 to 3 hours to commit every single day, but these are opportunities here within the Rexburg area that you can go to. All these places are within a 15 to 30 minute drive. I don't know if Northern Lights will ever happen again here, but there are different ways that we can interact with our outdoors, get a breath of fresh air, and to reconnect and to let go of stress. And now you might be wondering, well, it kind of snowed just a couple of days ago, and I don't really want to be outside anymore. Well, there are activities that you can do that are indoors. You can go on a date, go to Fat Cats, go bowling and practice your flirting. You can also do intramurals or just go to the gym and get exercise. And it's a great place too, also to meet people, to reconnect, and also have a new trust group of people. And personally, there's no statistic on this, but I always feel 50% better at least when I go shopping. So retail therapy, it's a thing, you can do it. Now we're gonna go on to our 4th point, which is to have gratitude. So can I have each of you hold up the number 4, and we're gonna turn it to the side. And that's a little list of what you're grateful for. We know that there is power of putting pen to paper. And so I did a little exercise, and I wrote down everything that I was grateful for that I could think of on this note card. Positive psychology had said writing a letter shifts our attention so that our focus is on positive emotions. The positive effects of gratitude, writing, compound like interest. There are benefits to writing down what you are grateful for. You're remembering what it is in your life that matters most to you. And what also is huge as well is to share that gratitude. Let people know what you are grateful for. Let them know that you're thankful that they're in your lives and what they have done specifically to help you. Now we're going to go on to our last point, number 5, which is service. So everyone, let's have a hand up, and you can shake the person's hands next to you. If you're at home, give yourself a nice little high five. There's lots of different ways that we can serve. Here is a QR code for the Just Serve in Rexburg. Just Serve is also a global opportunity for those within the church and those without. For you to have a chance to serve your community, it just snowed. You can go plow or shovel snow that's around. You could have briefly for a couple weeks ago, thank goodness it snowed. There's lots of different ways also that you can serve within the home. If you're here at school, you can serve your roommates by making their bed, doing their dishes. But creating this time where you look outside of yourself and you look for the needs of others. Because we know when we are in the service of our fellow beings, we are also in the service of our God. So today, we have talked about 5 different ways where we can have small and simple things create a huge impact in our lives. And remember that happiness is not a destination, but it is a mindset and theory of small and simple choices. So let's go over the 5 again together. Number 1, point to yourself. Remember, you are most important, and never forget that. Number 2, let's have peace in our lives. Number 3, see your dance moves. Life's a party, don't forget it. Number 4, list what you're grateful for. And number 5, extend a hand of service. Give someone a nice high five. And I want you today to choose something. Choose one of these things to practice in your everyday lives. Try it out for the next week and see if it truly does bring happiness in your lives. Alma 37:6 says, by small and simple things are great things brought to pass. And I want you to forget to never smile. Thank you.
Maren Buma is in her sophomore year at BYU Idaho, studying communications with an emphasis in strategic organization, and is working towards a career in the nonprofit sector. Maren is from Fairbanks, Alaska, in which she's not dancing or pole panning. She's soapboxing about something. Please welcome Maren Buma.
All right, I'm gonna take it down a notch. A 14-year-old girl loses her dad and spends the subsequent years grieving. She wants to talk to her friends and share the happy memories that she's got, but every time she tries, she's met with awkward silence and blank stares. It sounds like a pretty unfortunate situation, but it's not a hypothetical. This was my life. After I lost my dad, I wanted nothing more than my friends to be there for me, listen to me, and support me. But over the years, I realized that they just didn't quite have the tools to know how to help. I was receiving so much sympathy, but I didn't want their pity. What I wanted was their empathy. Understanding proper principles of empathy can help us strengthen relationships and support people in ways we could have never imagined. I understand that many people here may not have had a traumatic event younger in their life, and so they might not know how to use empathy quite yet. However, because most of us are going to experience something like that in the future, it's important for us to understand how to use these proper principles of empathy so we can not only help ourselves, but support the people around us as well. Today, as I'm speaking, I'm going to be talking a lot about grief, but I want us to recognize that grief doesn't only apply to death. Grief happens when we've lost something that we love. It may be a person, but it could also be an experience or a thing. So throughout the speech today, as I'm explaining the difference between empathy and sympathy, why we need to say something, and understanding maybe what we can say, we're going to be building foundational principles to help you best exercise empathy. There's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to empathy and sympathy, but in terms of grief, empathy has far more reach. In my second semester here at BYU Idaho, I took a class called Interpersonal Theory and Communication. In this class, we had a certain unit on empathy, and it was the first time in a really long time that I felt seen. We're reading a book called Looking Out, Looking In, and in this, the authors dive into 3 different dimensions of empathy that give us a larger view. The first dimension of empathy is perspective, when we can be selfless and go outside of ourselves, put ourselves in the shoes of the person who's grieving, we can start to see their point of view. How would this situation affect me if I was going through this personally? Once we can understand the perspective, we can enter the emotional dimension. This is where we get in the weeds and we really feel things with people. This isn't, I know how you feel, one of the worst phrases known to man. But it's just sitting with someone, listening and hearing what they have to say and how they're feeling. And finally, we reach the dimension of well-being, when we have a genuine care and concern for someone and what they're going through. If that sounds familiar, that's because it's the essence of sympathy. It's having that care for someone. But if we look at empathy in all 3 of these dimensions, we can see that it's a triple threat that can really reach someone in their darkest moments. We're validating not only their well-being, but also their perspective and their emotions. You know those days where you're just feeling so down and discouraged, and you want someone to walk up to you and say, "How are you doing?" It is so much harder to initiate conversations about what you're struggling with as opposed to someone coming up to you and asking, "Are you okay?" In my preparation for my thoughts today, I conducted a case study with about 50 students here at BYU, Idaho, and I asked their opinions on grief and empathy. 99.9% of the students I talked with agreed that empathy has a very large implication when it comes to grief. However, there are two specific answers to questions that I want to share with you today because the results honestly inspired me. The first question that was asked was, what are you afraid to ask someone who's grieving? As we scanned this list and as I read through the additional answers, I was honestly so overjoyed to see the innate desire that these students had to be empathetic to other people. They really did care. The next question that I asked is, what are you afraid to do for someone who's grieving? And again, I was inspired. I was also incredibly humbled to see how much these people care, what they want to do, and the vulnerability in sharing that with me. So why is it that we're so afraid? Why have we been raised to think if we're talking about someone who's passed away or something that we've lost, that we have to be quiet? It's something that we can't talk about and it's awkward. There's a grief counselor here on campus named Brother Benjamin Rolfe, and I've worked with him personally, and I recently reached out to him again and asked his written thoughts on empathy versus sympathy and how it applies to grief. He said the following: grief is not something that needs to be fixed. Grief needs to be witnessed. So let the person who's grieving guide them on what they need. I think usually we don't do anything and we don't say anything because we're so afraid that what we're going to do or say is wrong. We don't want to offend someone. We don't want to make things uncomfortable. So I've created something to help give you a couple tools and realize that the best place to start is to just mope with someone. Mope is a pretty common word that we know. We think of sitting in the corner in our pajamas, wrapped in our tortilla blanket, and just commiserating about life. But when we break it down into a simple acronym, we have 4 different ways that we can mope with people and truly empathize. The first is match the energy. And I've got a story for this one. I was about 16, so 2 years after my dad had passed away, and I was at McDonald's with my friends eating ice cream in the car. Somehow, we got on the subject of hair. One of my friends commented that his dad has a full head of hair, despite being old, and really hoped that he looked like him someday. My next friend commented that her dad had half a head of hair, and hoped that she didn't really look like him someday. So naturally, I thought it was my turn, and I said, well, my dad's bald, so I hope I don't look like him when I'm older. Instead of inciting laughter like I thought it would, I was once again met with awkward stares and a lot of silence. I was confused. We were laughing about stuff, we were eating ice cream, we were having a good time. What exactly happened? It's because they didn't want to match my energy. You need to be selfless and get outside of yourself and just experience things with people. If someone is laughing about the person that they've lost and a good memory they have, laugh with them. If they're crying, be a shoulder to cry on. And if they're confused about how they're feeling and what they're going through, ask them thought-provoking questions to help them get to their own answer. You don't have to fix it for them. Remember, grief just needs to be witnessed. The O in MOPE stands for offer something of value. I can't tell you how many people reached out to me and said that I had a bed to sleep in if I needed to get out of the house, or gave me a box of candy because they were thinking about me. I even had a girl who I barely knew gave me a coloring book because she said it helps her when she's sad. We're usually afraid to offer anything because we're scared it's not good enough or it doesn't fit the situation. And we definitely don't want to buy someone a sympathy card. But you are not the determinator of the value of your offering. The person who's grieving, that might be exactly what they need. So please don't shy away from offering who you are, your talents, your love, and your abilities, because that might be exactly what they need. A stands for ask questions and listen. If we reference back to the original definition of those dimensions of empathy, we need to keep their perspective and their emotions in mind. But how are we supposed to do that if we're not really talking to them? Questions like, how are you doing? What are you feeling? And what can I do for you may seem extremely cliche, but they can be so impactful and help someone open up and discover how they're actually feeling.
You may be answered with something like, oh, it's okay, or I'm fine, because they're not quite ready yet. But you've established a level of trust for them to come to you later when they are ready. And as you're listening, don't forget to provide opportunities for remembrance. This has been one of the most healing parts of my own personal grieving journey. My dad was my best friend. He was hilarious, charismatic, and everyone loved him. You would not get into the church building without giving Brother Buma an elbow bump. Things like that, I need to remember, and I need to share with people who my dad was. These people, these experiences, these things that we've lost are so positive. They are wonderful things, and just because they're not here anymore doesn't mean they don't hold the same value. So please, let your friends remember the best things about their past. I recently had a friend lose his sister very tragically and unexpectedly. She was really young and no one expected it. When I heard what had happened, despite all of my years of soapboxing and preaching about empathy, I was stuck. I had no idea what to do and no idea how to support my friend. And so I went back to the basics and I moved with him. I tried to match his energy and understand his perspective on where he was with this experience. I offered for us to spend some time together, and we had a really great day a couple days before his sister's funeral. I asked questions about how he was feeling and gave me an opportunity to open up about what was going on in his mind. And as I listened to him, he told me that his little sister really loves Taylor Swift. Understanding the difference between empathy and sympathy, going outside of ourselves to say something and know that what we have to say has value, allows us to connect with people in a deeper way. It allows us to support them and show true compassion and empathy. As I was speaking today, I really hope that someone came into your mind. Whether or not they did, I want you to reflect for a moment and think, who in my life is going through some form of emotional pain? Who's grieving something? Who's stressful? I'm asking you today to please mope with them, match their energy, offer anything of value, ask questions and listen to them, and provide opportunities for them to remember the good times. I've been standing on this soapbox for about 7 years, and I've had the really beautiful experience of turning my sympathy towards others who didn't understand grief into empathy for them. At the end of the day, that's what this is about. Loving people, showing support, and of course, expressing empathy.
Thank you so much, Maren. Our next speaker is N. Timothy Smith, or Father Tim as his classmates refer to him. He is a junior studying strategic organizational communication. He was raised in Idaho with his 3 sisters. He loves learning and teaching about conflict transformation, having fun with his family and friends, reading many books, and of course, potatoes. Give it up for Tim Smith.
So good to be with you guys this afternoon. Before we get started, I'd like to invite all of you to take a moment and think about the last time that you experienced a conflict with someone close to you. What did that look like? What did it feel like? Was that a negative experience or a positive experience? If you're like most people, you probably look back on that and you're like, that was not a good experience, right? We don't like conflict. We tend to view it as something negative. I think especially within the church, we're raised hearing contention is of the devil, contention is bad. But something that Dieter F. Uchtdorf said is that conflict is inevitable, but contention is a choice. Conflict actually gives us opportunities for growth and opportunities for change, and can actually be a positive experience that can strengthen relationships. Because ultimately, conflict is about relationships, and it can be something that's destructive, or we can transform it into something constructive, something positive that can help our relationships. For example, a conflict that I've had in my life is with my dad. The conflict simply was I haven't always had the relationship with him that I wanted, and I spent years blaming him for not reaching out and creating the friendship that I wanted to have with him. And all of that started to change for me about 1 year ago, right before I came over here for school, when I asked his advice on what class I should take. And I was like, I can take this class called Peace 101. It's about conflict and peace. I was like, do you think that would be a good general to take? And he's like, oh yeah. He's like, that would be amazing. He's like, I use my mediation training all the time. And he's like, you'll use it in every job that you have. And that point was a turning point for me. And as I came over here and I started learning about conflict and I started learning about how to transform it, I realized that I could make a change. I could change the relationship with my dad, and I could change the conflicts that I have in my life through a few small, simple things. And so I'm not going to go into all of the millions of things that we could talk about with conflict, but I want to share with you just a few small steps that we can all take in order to begin changing the conflicts in our lives. So first, to understand how we can change conflict. What is conflict? We need to understand what it is. What is it that we're dealing with? And why do we view it as negative? Well, like most things, our view of conflict is shaped by the way that we were raised. In their book, Interpersonal Conflict, Joyce Hawker and William Wilmot say that most people grew up in one of three systems. They either grew up in an avoidance system, an aggressive system, or a collaborative system. Some of us, I feel like, grew up in both of those systems. I don't know if you're like me, but one of my parents, I feel like, was on one side and the other parent was on the other side. But so most of us grow up in one of those first two systems, right? We view conflict as something negative, as violent, as, how many of you thought of an argument when I asked about conflict? But how many of you thought about a conversation that you're avoiding? And that's what I want to talk about today, is avoiding conflict specifically, because we do this all the time. The problem with avoiding conflict is that when we avoid conflict, we avoid relationships. Like I said before, it's all about relationships. And when we avoid those difficult conversations and we avoid those conflicts, then we're avoiding opportunities to connect with people. We start labeling conflict bad. And so because conflict is bad, it's really easy to start labeling the person that we're in conflict with as bad, and to begin blaming them for the conflict that we're in, like my experience with my dad. The Arbinger Institute, in their book, Leadership and Self-Deception, calls this collusion, or a simple way to, another name you could call it, is the blame game, right? When you're in conflict with somebody, whether you're avoiding them or whether you're trying to fight with them, collusion is inviting them to fight with you. If I am avoiding a conversation, if I'm avoiding a conflict, nothing will ever get resolved. And the other person has no incentive to come and connect with me and to resolve the conflict. If I'm being overbearing and aggressive and I'm pushing too hard, then that invites them either to fight back with me or to avoid me. And so in order to change the way that we deal with conflict, we need to get ourselves out of this cycle of collusion. One of my favorite definitions, probably my favorite definition of conflict, is by Chad Ford. He's a college professor and an international mediator. And in his book, Dangerous Love, he defines conflict as our inability to collaboratively solve problems with other people. So how do we move from all of this negativity, from the avoidance and the aggression, and the collusion, how do we move from the negativity and the avoidance over to collaboration? How do we begin to collaboratively solve problems with people? Well, Chad Ford talks about in his book what he calls the most dangerous move, which is turning first. How did you all feel when my back was turned to you? Did you feel like I was trying to connect with you? Did you feel like I was trying to have a conversation with you? Versus now, do you feel like I care about you? Do you feel like I want to have an experience with you? When we're in collusion with people, he views the diagram often of being back to back. And so we need to turn towards them. We need to see them as they are, and we need to see the conflict as it is. And I'd like to invite you to take 3 small steps towards turning first. The first step is to get curious. Get curious about yourself, about the conflict. Ask yourself, what am I doing that is inviting the other person to be in conflict with me? Am I avoiding this conflict? Am I avoiding a difficult conversation? Am I pushing too hard? What am I doing that is inviting them to have a negative experience with me? The second step comes out of the same book that Maren was talking about, looking out, looking in. We need to use you language I know this sounds backwards because we've heard our whole lives use I language, take responsibility, say I feel and I see. Throw all of that out. Use you language. You need to look at the other person. You need to say, what do you need? What are the needs that you have that are not getting met? How do you need to fight? How do you engage in conflict? What can we do for you so that you can be seen and you can get your needs met? This is at the heart. Chad Ford calls this the heart of turning first, right? Seeing other people as people and recognizing their needs. And that brings me to the third step. When we see other people and we recognize their needs, when we turn towards them, it requires us to be vulnerable. Vulnerability can be a very scary thing. Right? When you think of vulnerability, we usually think of, I'm in danger, right? I'm vulnerable, I'm in danger, I could get hurt. But Brené Brown, the shame researcher, who talks a lot about shame and vulnerability and dealing with imperfection, she defines vulnerability. She says vulnerability is about showing up and being seen. How can I expect my needs to get met if I'm not willing to be seen? How can I expect the person that I'm in conflict with to turn towards me and to be vulnerable unless I'm willing to show up for them and to show up for us? So in order to turn first, we need to get curious. We need to get curious about ourselves. What are we doing? What do we need to change? And take responsibility. Then we need to turn towards them and look at them and say, what do you need? What are the needs that you have that are not getting met? And then we need to invite collaboration. Collaboration is when we work together against the problem. Like Thomas S. Monson said, we should never let a problem be solved become more important than a person to be loved. All conflict is about relationships, and we begin to turn towards the other person. We begin to invite them through seeing them as people and caring about their needs and inviting them to collaborate with us, that it no longer becomes me and you, I and you. It's about us. It's about us together against the problem, and then we can resolve conflict by working together to find a solution that meets both needs. Going back to my story about my dad, I came over here to BYU, Idaho, and I started learning about conflict, and I started learning about collusion, and I started learning about turning first, and I remember one day going, oh man, maybe I'm the problem. And that was a big perception shift for me, because I thought my whole life, if my dad wanted to have a better relationship with me, then he would do something about it. And I started to realize I was the one that was trying to have a better relationship. I was the one that wasn't getting my needs met, and I was the one that was blaming him instead of inviting him. And so when I started asking him for advice, when I started talking to him in terms of the things that he's interested in, my dad's an expert at computers. He's been working in the industry for a long time. He's done mediation training, so he knows a lot of these same principles. When I started talking to him and trying to connect with him on the things that he loved and the things that made him who he was, and asking for his advice, my whole perspective changed. And even though our relationship isn't perfect, over the last year, my attitude towards my father has changed. And now I see him as a friend. I see him as somebody that I can talk to about the issues that I'm facing and the trials that I experienced while in school. And all it took was that one small step for me to say, maybe I'm the problem. Maybe I can change this. Vulnerability is scary. But if nobody turns first, nothing will change. So my invitation to all of you today is to just take a small step towards change. We can begin simply by getting curious. It doesn't have to be big, dramatic, or even hard. If you can just take a small step to get curious about conflict, to get curious about the other person, then you can begin the process of turning first. And your conflicts don't have to be something negative and something contentious and destructive. Instead, your conflicts can be something collaborative, where you have the opportunity to see people as people, and you have the opportunity to work with them to strengthen your relationship and have both of your needs get met.
Valiant Grisel is a self-proclaimed jack of all trades, master of none. He enjoys dabbling in styles and talents such as film, writing, and catching lizards. Valiant is excited to talk about how his personal life experiences combined with what he's learned as a marriage and family studies major can help everyone safely get from the friend zone to the end zone. Please welcome Valiant Grisel.
Growing up, I was girl crazy. There's really just no way around it. And unfortunately, that caused a lot of problems. Just a visual representation here of the girls that I liked who didn't reciprocate. Although, actually, it's not quite accurate. Hold on. There we go. That's more accurate, right? You guys have caught on a lot sooner than I did, but I am the common denominator in this problem. And so between these experiences, growing closer to the Savior, and as a marriage and family studies student, I've come to understand that when we understand the importance of marriage, but fail to implement healthy dating patterns, we have a negative impact both on our own self-esteem as well as on our actual relationships. And so today I'm going to be talking about that. We have that understanding of marriage. There's a quote from President Dallin H. Oaks: "Gather your courage and look for someone to pair off with. Start with a variety of dates with a variety of young women or men, and when that phase yields a good prospect, proceed to courtship. It's marriage time." And people are either really good at following one part of this or the other, rarely both. They either focus on it's marriage time and overcommit, or they forget about marriage and just want to date and there we go. And so we want to get a healthy middle ground. And so one of the things to talk about with this is how do we actually get there? How do we correct our understanding of marriage? And for the most part, BYU, we get it. We have an idea. You know, for the most part, everyone has that goal of a healthy celestial marriage. But it doesn't take long for, the engagement ring starts getting posted, then the engagement photos, and then it just gets really weird. And then they actually get married, and it gets weirder, and you're just like, okay, what is happening now? And it gets to a point where we've lost sight of why we're getting married, right? And a big part of this, especially for those who have commitment issues, has to do with consumerism culture. With iPhones, every year there's a better version of the same thing. Or every single network provider telling you they have the best option for the best price. Or every time something goes on sale, it's all about upgrades and getting things for good deals. And unfortunately, this applies to how we see people as well. In social media or in movies, there's this idealized version of people, especially this one. This one's really good, right? But ultimately, this can cause us to see people and have expectations of physical attributes or personality traits that frankly are either unrealistic or in the long run will not actually play that big of a role in marriage, right? Except this one. This is a realistic depiction of a bad haircut, so this one makes sense. So what does this actually do? Because of this consumerism culture, we start to not be loyal to anything or anyone that does not continue to meet our needs at the right price, right? This is an unfortunate reality that people struggle to overcome. Maybe they're not quite as athletic as you want, or you don't have quite as much of a spark as you, hope you would have. And that can create problems. And so one of the ways we can overcome this is with the relationship attachment model. Now these 5 steps, I know you've all heard a lot of different steps. One more, this is exaltation we're talking about. So each one builds off of the other. So we're gonna start off with no. This is pretty self-explanatory, but yes, you do have to know the person you're dating. That's not love if you don't know them, that's stalking, right? But when I talk about knowing someone, I don't mean, oh yeah, I know their favorite TV show. What are their goals, their hopes, and their dreams? It's hard to get to know someone truly if every single date night is just you watching Netflix on the couch, right? You have to actually get to know them for who they are. After that, you can start to build trust. And again, I want to point out that these add on to each other. You know someone more than you know them. Progressive and builds off of the previous ones. Once you've started to gain trust with someone, you can start to rely on them. I'm not saying they do everything for you, but the more you get to know and trust them, the more you can share with them about what's going on in your day. Do you have a bad day? Can you talk to them? How do they handle it? Are they just a professional pessimist, or are they actually gonna, help you out with your problems? From there, you can start to get to commitment, and this is where people struggle. They either commit too fast or they don't commit at all. But a commitment can increase throughout time, same with all of these. A commitment is as simple as agreeing to go on a date with someone. Doesn't mean you're getting married, although that is a commitment. Pretty big one. But that commitment can go from hanging out to going on a date to being boyfriend and girlfriend to getting engaged to then getting married. If you're following these steps, each successive commitment will not feel like pulling teeth, but will be a natural and healthy progression. And then lastly, physical touch enters the picture. Sometimes we get too focused on the honeymoon hormones. We're so excited. And the most egregious example of putting touch out of whack would be breaking the law of chastity. But knowing the audience, I'm gonna go a little bit closer to home. There's NCMOs, right? Non-committal make-out partner, still a problem. Or what about just going back to date night, cuddling on the couch? Lots of physical touch that releases the happy hormones, but you're not really getting to know them. And so when we get these things out of whack, the cracks start to form in relationships. And I wish I had known this previously, because this could have changed my life. In my experience, this was me a while ago. I got home from my mission, and about a month after that, decided that I was going to start dating this girl. And we'd known each other for a while. It wasn't like we met a month after I got home, but we'd been talking for a while, and we decided to be exclusive, boyfriend and girlfriend. Now, just to clarify, I knew that she was a worthy temple recommend holder. I knew that she had good standards, she was fun, she was kind, and we had the same goals in life. But because we went straight from knowing each other to commitment and skipped that trust and relying stages, it had an effect on our relationship. So for a long time, it was long distance, so we thought, oh yeah, physical touch, we're chilling there. We're not having any problems with that, right? But over time, you have those ups and downs. And we started to realize, as the relationship got more difficult, that we had the same goals in life, but had completely different ideas of how we wanted to get there. And because of that, that caused conflict. And we thought we were pretty good at conflict resolution, because all you do in a long distance relationship is talk. So we're like, yeah, we got this. But it just continued to escalate until a point where about 10 months after we started dating, we decided to break up. And for a while, and I hope you know, I'm not like emotionally damaged from this. Like, this was a good experience, and we were both doing things correctly, but we could have done better and been a better support for each other had we followed the relationship attachment model. And now that I'm back in the dating game and trying to successfully implement these attributes, I've noticed a couple of things. When I focus on getting to know the person I want to date with, it helps me to see them not as future wife or, sugar baby or whatever you're going to cringe name you're going to call them, but to help you see them as a child of God. These are individuals that have unique potential. And when you focus on getting to know them and building trust before those other stages, you can see them that way. Which is why my invitation to you, again, I know you've had a lot, is to follow the relationship attachment model. Any married people out there might be chuckling, thinking you're good. No, you're not. This goes back to marriage. The reason it works so well is because when you're married, it changes from an escalation to a circle, one eternal round. These help you prepare for marriage, because these are what you need to do when you're married. ultimately, we understand why marriage is important. It's part of God's plan. He wants it for us. But now we can also understand healthy dating patterns. As you apply these things, no matter how many awkward first dates, how many times you get friend zoned or get heartbroken, you can have the confidence that with each bad date, you're getting closer to the person that you can get to the end zone with. And you can have the confidence to know that you're in the end zone and you'll actually enjoy being there with them.
All right, let's welcome our speakers one last time to the stage. All right, let's give our speakers one last round of applause. Thank you so much to our viewers online and in person, and have a wonderful day.